Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back thousands of years, right to the muddy, glimmering edge of the Nile, where dawn paints the water silver and the air carries a hint of cool before the Egyptian sun inevitably scorches everything in sight. You're standing barefoot in the sand, clutching a woven basket full of rumpled linen tunics, tablecloths, and maybe that one garment you've been putting off washing because, well, scrubbing clothes on stone slabs is basically the ancient version of running a marathon without shoes. You probably won't survive this particular laundry day. Not because of exhaustion, but because at some point a crocodile might decide you look like the fresher option. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, I'd love to know. Drop it down below so we can all share this odd little nighttime voyage together. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge toward the riverbank, basket balanced awkwardly against your hip. The sky is still soft and purple, birds are beginning to fuss in the reeds, and somewhere out there a fisherman's boat creaks as he casts his net. The Nile isn't just scenery, it's lifeblood. Fields drink it, markets depend on it, priests sanctify it. And today your tunics depend on it too, whether they like it or not. Your bare feet slide into cool mud. The air smells faintly of water plants, something earthy, something sweet. You breathe in, steadying yourself. Laundry here is not just a chore. It's ritual, it's gossip time, it's the social glue of the village. You'll notice already a small group of women gathered further down the bend, laughing too loud for this hour, their hands busy wringing cloth while their voices carry. Laundry is an early alarm clock, but at least it comes with company. Mainstream fact: linen dominates your basket. Egyptians adored linen. It was light, breathable, and cool against skin that otherwise would be baked alive. They made it from flax plants, harvested in neat bundles, stripped and spun into fibers smoother than most people expect. That's centuries away. Too itchy for this climate, linen was king. You pull out a tunic, beige from overuse, stiff with sweat and dust from days in the fields. The Nile greets it like an old friend. You kneel, lowering the cloth into the water, letting the fibers soak. Around you, the river hums with quiet life. Ripples against stone, frogs croaking faintly, the occasional startled splash. Here's the quirky tidbit. Egyptians sometimes used crocodile dung as part of cosmetic pastes and even sunscreen. Imagine that, slathering yourself with reptile fertilizer to keep from getting burned. If that doesn't make you grateful for modern SPF 50, nothing will. And yes, you're standing here in the same water that might have provided ingredients for both laundry day and skincare. Try not to think too hard about it as you rinse your tunic. Historians still argue whether professional washermen or washerwomen existed as a distinct job or if every household just managed their own loads. Some papyrus fragments suggest hired specialists worked near temples or estates, but other evidence points toward shared domestic duty. Maybe both were true depending on wealth. Either way, you, my sleepy listener, are doing your own scrubbing tonight. Sorry, no outsourcing. You lift the fabric and twist it, water dripping down your arms. The sound is oddly soothing. A soft squeeze, a steady drip, the river catching it again. You imagine dozens of households along the banks, all repeating this same rhythm. A communal symphony of squeezes and slaps, punctuated by laughter and the occasional complaint about sand getting everywhere. And sand really does get everywhere. You thought lint was bad? Try folding linen after a gust of desert wind. Suddenly your clothes are exfoliating tools. Maybe that's why some Egyptians sprinkled natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture, into their washing process. Cleaned, deodorized, and maybe made things feel slightly less gritty. Though between you and me, nothing ever truly beats the desert. It always wins. You pause to stretch your back, basket half empty now, tunics soaking in the shallows like lazy crocodiles sunning themselves. The sun creeps higher and already you feel warmth rising off the river. Soon the glare will be fierce, but for now it's a gentle gold. Modern aside, if you tried this laundry method today, your gym membership would be unnecessary. Squats, deadlifts, bicep curls. This routine has it all. Egyptians were ripped without even realizing it. Forget CrossFit. This is Nile fit. You dunk another tunic, rhythm settling in. Soak, scrub, wring. The world slows. You're oddly meditative, hypnotized by the process. That's the secret charm of boring history. It's not really boring when you're in it. It's tactile, patient, humming with small joys. You glance at the women nearby again. They're still laughing, still beating cloth against stones in synchronized motions. One sings, her voice lilting. It's a work song, something that keeps the pace, something that makes laundry sound almost like celebration. You don't know the words, but you catch the cadence, the rise and fall. It fills the air, mixing with birdsong. By the time your basket empties, the sky is brightening into real daylight. The Nile shines like molten bronze. You stretch, wipe sweat from your brow, and admire your progress. So far, no crocodiles. Just mud on your ankles and linen damp and heavy. A small victory. Tomorrow there will be more dust, more sweat, more tunics. But right now you've survived the first plunge. You've stepped into the Nile with your basket and you've let the ancient rhythm carry you. Laundry is endless, sure. But here at least it feels timeless. The basket slung over your arm feels lighter now, but not empty. You've just started. The river is only half the ritual. To reach it, you first had to wander through the sleepy veins of the village, along narrow paths pressed down by centuries of sandals, donkey hooves, and stray goats with zero respect for traffic order. Mud brick walls lean in close, shading you just enough from the growing sun, while the air carries a cocktail of scents. Baking bread from clay ovens, smoke from early morning fires, and yes, that faint, unmistakable perfume of animal dung. Because what's a village without it? You pass doorways where children peer out, their eyes curious, their laughter too awake for this hour. A neighbor calls something teasing about your overloaded basket, and you raise it slightly as proof of your industriousness. Laundry is never a solitary act, even if you do it alone. The whole village participates in spirit, if not in labor. Every tunic draped on a line becomes part of the neighborhood scenery, fluttering flags of domestic life. Mainstream fact. Most Egyptian homes were small, 2 or 3 rooms at best, with flat rooftops often used for storage or sleeping. Courtyards doubled as workspaces, and laundry frequently began there before making its way to the river for rinsing. You probably set out this morning by shaking out your linens in that little courtyard, brushing off the biggest chunks of Nile silt or yesterday's sandstorm leftovers. Then you bundled them into your basket, tied up with a cord of woven palm fiber, and began this gentle procession. The village footpaths are not just roads. They are memory lanes, lined with the traces of every generation that's patted them. You notice chalky drawings on a wall. Stick figures of cattle, maybe the practice sketches of a child dreaming of becoming a scribe. A dog darts across, chasing after nothing but its own tail. Overhead, a palm frond creaks, moving against the sky like a lazy hand fan. Quirky tidbit. Some wealthier households may have owned copper basins specifically for soaking clothes, which sounds fancy until you realize that copper heats up like a stovetop in the Egyptian sun. Imagine grabbing your laundry only to scorch your fingers. It's the ancient version of leaving your phone on the dashboard. Most villagers like you stuck with baskets and clay jars, far less dramatic and far less likely to cause unplanned burns. Historians still argue whether these village paths were formally planned or simply grew like vines, twisting naturally around fields, houses, and irrigation canals. Was there an ancient urban planner sketching maps on papyrus, or did people just say, well, everyone already walks this way, so let's make it official? Either way, the paths lead you consistently toward the river, the ultimate destination. You step over a patch of dried reeds, crunching beneath your feet like brittle crackers. A donkey tied nearby eyes your basket suspiciously, as if it too knows the struggle of burdens. You pause to shift the weight from one arm to the other, careful not to drop a damp sleeve into the dust. Sand and fresh-washed linen do not mix well. You've learned this the hard way. And yet, despite the inconvenience, there's a serenity to this walk. Every corner offers a detail that roots you in the present moment. A clay jug cooling in a shaded niche, a woman sweeping her doorstep with a bundle of palm fibers, a scribe hurrying past with ink-stained fingers, muttering about scroll deadlines. Laundry may be repetitive, but the world around it never is. Modern aside, if you were hoping to sneak in a quick load before work, well, too bad. This isn't a spin cycle. This is a slow stroll to the river with neighbors peeking out to judge how much you've let the dirt pile up. It's like airing your dirty laundry, literally, in front of the entire village. And you thought apartment laundromats were socially awkward. The path finally opens wide, revealing the shimmer of the Nile ahead. Reeds sway, insects buzz, and the water glints in the growing sunlight. Your shoulders relax despite the weight. Because even though this walk happens countless times in a lifetime, it always ends the same. At the river where earth and water and community meet. You settle your basket on a flat stone near the shore, catching your breath. The villagers you passed will eventually follow, baskets on hips, chatter on lips. The path you just traced ensures that no one washes alone, even if they arrive separately. You've carried not just your laundry but also the rhythm of the village. The bread ovens, the children, the watchful donkey, all stitched invisibly into the seams of your tunics. The riverbank feels like a stage, and your basket of wrinkled fabric the day's starring cast. But before you dip another tunic, let's backtrack in your imagination. Because every piece of linen here once began its life as a flax stalk swaying in a field under the same Egyptian sun that now glints on the Nile. You picture yourself walking through those fields. The stalks rise hip-high, slender and green, their tiny blue flowers fluttering shyly in the breeze. They don't look like much, but inside those stems hide the fibers that, once coaxed and beaten and spun, become the linen draped on every Egyptian from farmhand to pharaoh. Linen is so universal here, it's basically the Wi-Fi of ancient Egypt. Everybody's connected by it, whether they want to be or not. Mainstream fact: Egyptians cultivated flax in abundance, and linen became their signature textile. It clothed the living, it wrapped the dead in elaborate mummies, and it even served as currency at times. Temple workers and officials could be paid in bolts of linen instead of coins. Imagine opening your paycheck envelope and finding 3 neatly folded shirts instead of cash. Not exactly convenient at the tavern. The process from flax to fabric is anything but quick. You can almost feel the work in your own hands. Harvesting stalks, soaking them in water until the fibers loosen, pounding and combing until long, silky strands emerge. Then comes spinning with a spindle, twisting thread that could stretch endlessly, and weaving on upright looms where rhythm and patience intertwine. Hours upon hours, days upon days. Every crease in your laundry carries the echo of that labor. Quirky tidbit: elite Egyptians sometimes requested linen woven so fine it was nearly transparent, a fashion flex that left little to the imagination. Priests especially preferred ultra-thin linen because purity rituals demanded clothing as close to light itself as possible. There are actual records of fabric described as woven air. So next time you think your t-shirt is see-through under harsh light, remember, ancient fashion did it first and deliberately. Historians still argue whether all households wove their own linen or whether village specialists produced bolts in bulk. Tomb scenes show both women spinning at home and larger workshops with multiple looms, suggesting a mixture of cottage industry and organized production. Perhaps much like your modern debate between home-cooked meals and takeout, Some people handled the work themselves while others outsourced. Either way, you stand here at the river holding a garment that is both intimate and communal, woven by many hands before it wrapped around your shoulders. You lift a tunic from your basket, its fibers still strong despite wear. Linen ages gracefully. It softens with each wash, becoming almost buttery against the skin. You rub the cloth between your fingers, noting how it crackles slightly when dry but flows smooth once wet. There's a quiet dignity to this fabric. Unlike wool, it doesn't cling or itch. Unlike silk, it doesn't scream luxury. Linen is steady, reliable, timeless. If fabric were a personality type, linen would be the introvert. Understated, essential, and surprisingly durable. Modern aside, imagine ancient influencers giving linen haul reviews. This tunic is 100% organic flax, hand-spun, sustainably sourced along the Nile floodplain, breathable for desert heat, perfect for casual temple visits or embalming ceremonies. You'd scroll right past, but secretly you'd envy their style. As you kneel at the riverbank, you realize every piece of clothing here is more than laundry. It's biography. A farmer's tunic carries the story of long hours in the field, sweat and soil ground into every thread. A child's tiny kilt speaks of games in dusty courtyards. A priest's robe whispers of incense and ritual. By scrubbing, rinsing, and folding, you're not just removing dirt, you're renewing memory. The sun climbs higher, its rays streaking across the water. Reeds shiver in the breeze, casting dancing shadows over the damp tunics you've spread on rocks. Your hands ache a little, but it's the kind of ache that reminds you you're part of an ancient chain, each fiber of linen pulling you into continuity. The flax fields, the spinners, the weavers, the wearers, all of them converge here on this quiet morning beside the Nile in the simple act of doing laundry. You crouch by the river, sleeves rolled up, and eye the bundle of ingredients you've brought along for today's scrubbing session. Because in ancient Egypt, laundry isn't just a dunk and dry affair. It comes with its own special recipes. Forget neon blue detergent pods or lavender-scented liquids from the store. Here, your cleaning arsenal consists of powders, pastes, and a healthy amount of elbow grease. You scoop out a handful of natron, that chalky, salty mixture dug straight from dry lake beds. Mainstream fact: natron was a multipurpose wonder in Egypt. It preserved mummies, freshened breath, and yes, scrubbed laundry clean. It's part soda ash, part baking soda, part magic powder, and it gets sprinkled generously into the Nile water where your tunics soak. The grains dissolve, fizzing slightly, leaving the water with that faint mineral tang. Not quite lemon-scented freshness, but good enough to keep your clothes from smelling like donkey stalls. You add another helper, crushed clay, earthy and grainy between your fingers. It acts like a scouring agent, rough enough to scrub out stubborn stains but soft enough not to shred the linen. And then there's ash, collected from last night's cooking fire, still faintly smelling of roasted barley bread. Ash alkalizes the water, helping lift grease and oil, like the olive oil stains from yesterday's lunch or that drip of beer you'd rather not admit to spilling. Quirky tidbit: there's speculation that Egyptians experimented with primitive soap-like pastes, combining oils and alkaline substances. Some argue it was used mainly for treating skin, while others suggest laundry got a taste of it too. Imagine slathering your tunic with something halfway between shampoo and ointment. Effective maybe, but definitely weird smelling. Historians still argue whether ordinary households had consistent recipes or if laundry detergent varied wildly from village to village. Was there a standard mix handed down like Grandma's secret cookie recipe, or did everyone just toss in whatever they had? Natron, ash, clay, maybe even a sprig of aromatic herb for flair? Papyrus fragments mention natron often, but the details of how much and when remain foggy. Which means as you swirl your concoction, you're part of an unsolved mystery. the chemistry of clean clothes in the ancient world. You rub the gritty paste into a tunic, working the fabric against itself. The fibers rasp softly, the sound almost like whispering reeds in the breeze. You press harder, creating a steady rhythm. Dip, scrub, wring. Dip, scrub, wring. The Nile accepts each rinse, carrying away the dirt, leaving behind pale ripples that shimmer in the sunlight. Modern aside, this is the original DIY cleaning solution. Forget Pinterest hacks involving baking soda and vinegar. Egyptians were doing it 4,000 years ago. They'd look at your overstocked cleaning aisle and laugh. 15 different scents of laundry soap? Why, when ash and salt do the trick. You might roll your eyes, but part of you admits, it works. The air grows warmer, the smell of damp linen mixing with minerals, clay, and faint smoke from someone's breakfast fire drifting down the bank. The combination isn't glamorous, but it's grounding. You feel connected to every villager here, past and present, through these humble ingredients. Natron, ash, clay, ordinary yet essential, shaping life one tunic at a time. Your hands sting slightly from the alkalinity, the skin tightening, but you keep going. You picture the priests up at the temple, draped in immaculate linen for rituals, and realize someone somewhere had to stand exactly where you are, scrubbing away yesterday's grime with salt and mud. Divine purity begins with dirty hands. A child wades nearby, splashing half seriously at the water while his mother scolds him for kicking up mud into her wash. He giggles anyway, then offers you a reed as if that's payment for the water he just muddied. You laugh softly and tuck the reed behind your ear. Laundry days are as much about these tiny moments as they are about the clothes themselves. The sun edges higher, brightening the mineral dust on your hands. You lean back on your heels, glance at the basket now half transformed, tunics lighter, cleaner, smelling faintly of earth and fire. You smile because this simple act has folded you into the chemistry of the ancients. Your ingredients are plain, but the result? Clothes that carry freshness, ritual, and memory, all rinsed into the river's eternal flow. The air feels heavier as you carry your load toward the Nile, and the river greets you with its own unmistakable perfume. It's not unpleasant exactly, more like a confusing mixture of damp reeds, faint fishiness, wet stone, and the sharp mineral tang that clings to your nose when you lean too close. You crouch down, press your hand into the flowing water, and feel its coolness bite against your skin. This is the Nile, the great artery of Egypt, and tonight it's the only laundromat you'll ever need. As you wade closer, the mud squishes between your toes, gripping your heels like soft glue. The banks are dotted with baskets, each one balanced precariously by someone who got here before you. A few women hum under their breath as they beat cloth against flat stones. The rhythm carries downstream like an ancient lullaby, interrupted every so often by the splash of a stubborn stain meeting its fate. The historical fact here: the Nile's annual flood deposited fertile silt, not just for farming, but also creating those sticky, mineral-rich patches of riverbank clay. People really did notice how this mud seemed to cling to dirt and help draw it out of fabric. It wasn't scientific detergent, but it was an ancient form of stain lifter. Think of it as the OxyClean of antiquity. You scoop up a handful now, rub it against a linen tunic, and watch the clay turn darker as the sweat marks surrender. Meanwhile, a quirky tidbit drifts your way. Archaeologists have found evidence that crocodile dung, yes, crocodile dung, was sometimes used in mixtures not only for laundry aids but also for cosmetics and even primitive birth control. You probably won't survive this routine if you actually tried it, but the ancients seemed oddly optimistic about reptilian contributions to daily hygiene. Tonight you stick to mud and water because some experiments are better left in the textbooks. The splash of another washer startles you, and you glance downstream to see a group of men hauling their laundry deeper into the current, where the water runs faster. They're laughing, wrestling, and accidentally baptizing their clothes and each other. It's the kind of chaos that makes you wonder if the garments come out any cleaner than they went in. Historians still argue whether men participated as routinely as women in laundry, or whether this was more of a social break disguised as chores. From the sound of the shouting, you'd put your money on the latter. The moon glints off the water as you wring a cloth, twisting until your knuckles ache. Tiny droplets fling into the air and land back on your face. Yes, laundry day is giving you a Nile facial. You smell the earthy scent of damp linen, so different from modern dryer sheets, and you find yourself imagining an ancient Egyptian version of a detergent ad. Instead of a smiling suburban mom pulling a fluffy towel from a machine, you picture a woman here kneeling, smacking tunics against rocks with a grin that says, "Gets the goat blood out every time." Another callback. Remember the animal fat soap from earlier? One woman here actually has a small lump of it tucked in a reed basket. She pinches off a bit, works it into the fabric, and then slaps the cloth against stone. The suds don't exactly froth up like your shampoo. They're faint, delicate, barely visible. But there's something oddly satisfying about watching her method. You almost want to hand over your whole basket, outsource the chore, and take a nap in the reeds. But you keep at it because this is your laundry night, and as monotonous as it seems, there's a soothing rhythm in the work. Scrub, dip, wring, slap. Scrub, dip, wring, slap. A pattern hypnotic enough to draw you into a state where time blurs, the stars twinkle, and the river itself seems to hum with the motion. Every so often a frog croaks nearby, adding percussion to the night's song. Somewhere, a donkey brays as though annoyed at being left out of the fun. And behind you, a fisherman mutters about tangled nets, clearly wishing the laundresses would stop scaring away the fish. The world is alive, noisy, a little absurd, and yet you feel wrapped in this strange piece of communal effort. You follow the winding path toward the water's edge, the smell of damp reeds and silt curling into your nose like a reminder that the Nile is both friend and occasional foe. The sand beneath your feet gives way to moist soil, squelching slightly with every step. Ahead, the river stretches wide and patient, its surface shimmering in the sun. This is the communal heart of laundry day, where voices carry across the water and children splash like they have nothing better to do. You spot a group of women already kneeling at the banks, skirts hitched, arms elbow-deep in linen. The scene feels timeless, yet full of chatter and rhythm. Someone tosses a tunic across a reed mat, beating it with a flat wooden paddle until droplets fly. The sound is steady, almost hypnotic. Smack, 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 like the Nile itself clapping along. Another woman scrubs cloth against a large smooth stone half submerged, each stroke releasing suds of natron mixed with river water. The air smells faintly alkaline, sharp and earthy, a contrast to the wet rush of the Nile breeze. You kneel beside them, already bracing for the cool sting of water on your hands, and slide your own bundle of laundry onto the ground. The river is both practical and symbolic here. Egyptians believe it is the giver of life. Without its floods, no fertile fields, no bread, no beer, and certainly no clean tunics. Today, though, it's less about cosmic meaning and more about scrubbing out that week-old fish smell from your linen. You plunge your cloth into the water, and the Nile greets you with a shock of cold, even under the blazing sun. The current tugs lightly, threatening to steal your sleeve away if you're not paying attention. You squeeze the fabric hard, forcing water through its weave, feeling it yield beneath your fingers. Beside you, gossip flows more freely than the river. You catch half-whispered stories about a neighbor who tried to pass off goat cheese as cow's cheese, and another tale about a priest who tripped on temple steps. Everyone laughs, the sound echoing like gull cries over water. Laundry, it seems, is equal parts necessity and social theater. One woman pauses to balance a baby on her hip, still managing to scrub with her free hand. Multitasking existed long before smartphones. Then comes the quirky bit you didn't expect. Crocodile dung, yes again. Except this time it isn't sunscreen, it's detergent. Or so the chatter goes. Some households swear by crushing bits of dried crocodile droppings into the washing mixture to whiten fabric. You try not to imagine who had the privilege of collecting that particular supply. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice or just a quirky regional trick. But as you glance at the smirk on your neighbor's face, you wonder if she's simply pulling your leg. Either way, you resist sniffing your own laundry solution too closely. The work becomes rhythmic: soak, scrub, twist, smack against stone, repeat. It's almost meditative, and you find your shoulders loosening, your mind drifting with the current. You think about how this same stretch of river has been used for thousands of years, long before you, long after. Pharaohs may rise and fall, temples may crumble, but someone will always be here, rinsing a tunic against the Nile's skin. The thought is oddly comforting, like you're part of something eternal, even if it involves elbow grease. At one point, a young boy runs past, holding up a particularly ragged tunic like it's a prize catch. He shouts about finding a frog tucked in the folds, and the crowd erupts in laughter, even as the frog itself plops back into the river, unimpressed. The scene feels like a painting of ordinary life, where small joys are just as sacred as grand rituals. As you continue scrubbing, a heron lands nearby, staring at you with an unblinking eye as if judging your technique. You whisper an apology, promising to improve your scrubbing rhythm, and the bird struts off, unimpressed. Somewhere in the distance, a boatman calls out, guiding his reed boat through the slow current, his voice blending into the lull of water, chatter, and slapping cloth. The sun climbs higher, pressing its warmth into your shoulders. You splash water over your face for relief, droplets running cool down your cheeks. Around you, the laundry line begins to fill. Tunics, kilts, shawls flapping lazily like banners of an invisible festival. And as you pause to wring out the last bit of cloth, you realize something simple but profound. You're not just washing clothes. You're participating in an endless cycle of community, history, and survival, one scrub at a time. The walk from the marketplace to the riverbank is not a straight line, nor is it a quick shuffle. You weave your way through dusty alleys where mud brick homes squat in uneven rows, their doorways shaded by woven reed mats that dangle like lazy curtains. Children dart out barefoot, chasing each other with wooden hoops, their giggles sharp against the dull thud of sandals on the ground. A donkey brays, tugging against its tether, and the smell of freshly baked bread floats from an open oven. It's a simple commute, but for you, every corner hums with distractions. And your laundry bundle? It shifts on your hip, threatening at any moment to tumble into the dirt. Not that dropping it would change much. It's already filthy, but still, pride is pride. You nod at a potter shaping clay on his wheel, and he nods back, neither of you saying a word. There's an unspoken understanding between workers. You've each got your own mess to wrangle today. The potter's hands, slippery with wet clay, make you wonder if laundry is really so bad. At least your fingers won't be caked in drying mud. That's your pep talk anyway. A puff of dust rises as you step over a crack in the street, and you remind yourself, the Nile is close. You can almost hear its low rush, like fabric being shaken out. But first there are distractions. The smell of roasted fish lures you toward a stall where a woman fans glowing coals. You pause, almost hypnotized. She offers a chunk of fish wrapped in a palm leaf. You shake your head, trying to look virtuous, though your stomach growls. Another time, you mutter. Really, you're just calculating whether your clean tunic will smell like grilled tilapia for days. A little farther on, you pass a wall painted with ochre figures. Farmers bent over, swinging sickles, a line of ducks waddling toward a marsh. The drawings are crude but oddly charming, like graffiti on a subway car. Historians still argue whether this kind of casual wall art was done by hired painters or by bored workers killing time. You glance at it and smirk, imagining some ancient teenager doodling ducks while their parents weren't watching. Now the path narrows and the hum of the river grows louder. But so do the voices of other workers. You're not the only one hauling laundry today. Ahead, a group of women gossip as they balance clay jars on their heads, the jars wobbling like precarious crowns. They laugh, not in cruelty but with the camaraderie of shared chores. You trail behind them, catching snippets. Who said what at last week's festival? Which neighbor secretly burned their bread? Whose donkey has the ugliest ears? Ancient TMZ free of charge. Finally, the path slopes, and there it is. The glint of the Nile stretching wide, its surface broken by reeds and the occasional bobbing log. The water reflects the sun so brightly it's like staring at a metal plate. You squint, shield your eyes, and mutter about how you forgot to bring crocodile dung sunscreen. Yes, people actually use that. Supposedly. At least one medical papyrus mentions it, though historians still debate whether it was really for UV protection or just insect repellent. Either way, you're not slathering dung on your face today. The air changes here. Cooler, tinged with the smell of damp earth and riverweed. You let your bundle slide from your hip onto a flat rock, sighing in relief. Your arms feel like they've carried bricks, not linen. You wiggle your fingers, noticing red marks where the bundle pressed. That's the price of cleanliness. Modern detergents might burn your skin. Ancient laundry bundles just flatten your circulation. Fair trade maybe. A shout breaks the rhythm of the river's hush. You look up to see a fisherman pulling his net, grunting with effort. His net sparkles with silver scales, the fish writhing like spilled coins. He notices you watching and waves, probably proud of his catch. You wave back, even though your only prey today is grass stains. Somewhere behind him, a heron takes off in slow motion, wings wide, its shadow stretching over the rippling water. The sight is oddly calming, a reminder that life here flows in rhythms larger than your laundry chore. You crouch near the edge, dipping your hand in. The Nile is colder than you expect, slipping through your fingers like glass threads. For a second you forget the sweat prickling your back. Then the reality check kicks in. You still have hours of scrubbing ahead. You glance at your tunic, sigh and mutter, well, at least I'm not chiseling hieroglyphs in the sun. That thought almost makes the job feel noble. Almost. Before you get to work, you scan the bank. A boy chases a goat dangerously close to the edge. Two women beat clothes against smooth stones, the sound rhythmic like a drum. One pauses, spots you and nods a lazy hello. It's not unfriendly, but it reminds you that laundry here isn't just a task. It's a public event, a social gathering, an excuse to swap gossip while turning stains into something presentable. Imagine if laundromats today were open-air riverside festivals. You might actually look forward to laundry day. Till there's always a risk. A crocodile's head could surface at any time, those ridged eyes scanning for easy prey. You give the reeds a cautious glance, half expecting to see ripples. People still tell stories about someone's cousin's friend being dragged under while rinsing a tunic. Whether it's true or not, you hug your bundle a little tighter. So here you are, the Nile glittering like a giant basin, your bundle resting heavy on the rock beside you. The marketplace chatter lingers faintly behind, but ahead is the soft percussion of fabric against stone, the smell of river clay, the cool spray of water on your cheeks. Laundry day has officially begun, and whether you like it or not, you're part of the riverside rhythm now. You leave the clustered chatter of the washerwomen behind for a moment and wander to the quieter edge of the riverbank, where a line of earthen jars stands ready. The sun has climbed higher, laying a shimmer on the Nile's surface, but the reeds along the bank break the glare into gentle ripples. A boy not much older than 12 hauls a clay jar almost his size, grunting with effort as he steadies it on a slanted rock before dipping it into the river. You can hear the deep gulp of water filling it, echoing against the clay walls, and you can almost feel the cool splash that jumps up and lands on his bare chest. You squat nearby, brushing your hand along the hardened surface of one of the empty jars. The texture is rough but sturdy, the potter's fingerprints still faintly visible beneath the glaze of sand and fire. It is astonishing how much life along this river depends on these containers. Without them, carrying water to the laundry site would be impossible. Historians still argue whether smaller jars were more commonly used for daily water tasks or if even heavier, barrel-sized amphorae were dragged about, requiring 2 or 3 people at once. Either way, you can sense the aching muscles of those who have hauled them across the sandy bank for centuries. The boy finishes filling his jar, then pauses to adjust a leather sling across his forehead. With a practiced tilt, he hoists the jar upright against his back, bending forward so the weight shifts across his shoulders. The sheer force required makes you wince, and you mutter to yourself that you'd probably drop it in the first 2 steps. Another woman nearby shakes her head at him and teases, "Don't spill it or you'll drink mud tonight." He grins, water droplets still sliding down his arms. At the fringe of the group, a pair of women squat with smaller jars, filling them with fresh water not for rinsing clothes, but for drinking during the day. They carefully tie lids of woven palm fiber across the tops, an early attempt at keeping sand and flies out. It strikes you as both practical and inventive, though one lid is slightly askew, making you wonder how effective it really is. You lean closer and imagine the earthy mineral tang of Nile water, and a memory slips into your mind. How some modern tourists compare its taste to sweet stone, almost metallic. You quietly remind yourself that people here drink it daily without a second thought. One mainstream fact that floats to you like the river breeze is that the Nile was more than just laundry water. It was the foundation of agriculture, drinking supply, and even spiritual purification. To dip into the Nile was, in a way, to touch divinity, since Egyptians believed it was a gift directly from the gods. At the same time, a quirky tidbit surfaces. You once read that some households preferred to let river water sit in open jars overnight so that impurities would settle. In reality, it probably just made the water taste a little less muddy. Still, you can picture someone solemnly skimming the top the next morning, as if lifting away yesterday's sins. The act of carrying jars becomes its own rhythm of the day. You see the steady procession. Fill, hoist, wobble step, set down, then start again. Feet dig into the sand, shoulders strain, backs curve like drawn bows. For a brief moment you imagine yourself in their place, staggering under a jar that threatens to tip you backward. Your brain pipes up with an unhelpful joke. Congratulations, you've unlocked ancient Egyptian CrossFit. The absurdity makes you smile, but then you notice how matter-of-fact the workers are. This is no exercise class for them. It's the core of their survival. Beyond the jars and the strain of hauling them, your attention drifts to the scent of damp clay. The sun bakes the wet surfaces of the vessels almost as soon as they're lifted from the river, releasing a smell like hot stone after rain. It mixes with the musk of sweat and the faint tang of algae clinging to the jar's bottoms. You catch yourself breathing more deeply as though to hold on to that raw, elemental scent. A small commotion breaks out when one young man slips, the weight of his jar tilting dangerously. It tumbles sideways, strikes a rock, and water bursts onto the sand in a sudden flood. The crowd groans in unison, and he stands frozen, hands hovering helplessly as though he could scoop the water back in. A woman claps her hands at him, half scolding, half laughing. The Nile gives, the Nile takes. For a heartbeat, you swear you hear ancient echoes in her words. Centuries of resignation packed into that single phrase. As you watch another line of jars being filled, you notice their bases are caked in hardened mineral deposits. The repeated soaking and drying leaves whitish crusts that flake off onto the sand. Your fingers itch to scrape a piece free just to feel its brittle texture. The thought stirs curiosity. Historians still argue whether those mineral layers were occasionally collected and repurposed, perhaps even used in primitive cleaning mixtures. Nobody agrees, but as you imagine the gritty flakes swirling into a basin of washwater, you can almost see the possibility. The work continues in silence, broken only by occasional joking. A woman hums, her song light and circular, matching the rise and fall of water in the jars. Each repetition smooths your thoughts like water smoothing a stone. Time itself begins to feel jar-shaped. Filled, emptied, filled again, endlessly repeating along the banks of the Nile. You glance back at the crowd of washerwomen, their laughter rising like birds from reeds, and realize how seamlessly water hauling blends into the wider ritual of laundry day. Somewhere deep inside, a thought drifts lazily to the surface. If you lived here, this rhythm would anchor your mornings, pulling you again and again to the river's edge. It isn't just laundry, it's a choreography of survival. The jars, the water, the aching shoulders, the splashing laughter, it all loops endlessly, as constant as the current itself. You find yourself leaning against the cool stone lip of the basin, watching as the flow of water continues to rinse away the dirt. Your hands, pruny from scrubbing, rest on your thighs. The morning has stretched on into afternoon, the sun climbing higher until it hangs like a molten disk over the desert horizon. Even though it's blazing, you feel a subtle breeze coming off the river, carrying the briny tang of wet linen mixed with a faint vegetal musk. Papyrus reeds swaying in the distance, whispering secrets you'll never quite catch. You glance at your neighbors, each one absorbed in their own rhythm. A steady swish of fabric, a smack of cloth against stone, a grunt of effort. There's a kind of musicality to it, almost hypnotic if you let your brain soften around the sounds. You start noticing patterns. 3 smacks from one woman's bundle, a pause, then the slosh of someone plunging a sheet deep into the basin. It becomes almost like a lullaby that paradoxically demands effort rather than rest. Of course, you're sweating like a desert goat. The fabric sticks to your back in ways you'd prefer not to think about. Your arms ache from the endless kneading, and there's a whisper in your head telling you that perhaps, just maybe, modern laundry machines aren't such a frivolous invention after all. Historians often note that households in the Old Kingdom had servants assigned purely to laundry duty, though even wealthier Egyptians sometimes joined in, part ritual, part necessity. It's humbling, realizing that no matter how gilded the tomb or elaborate the temple, even pharaohs relied on clean underwear. Or at least that's the hope. At your side, a boy about 10 years old giggles as he splashes water deliberately too close to his mother's pile of drying cloth. She scolds him half-heartedly, then bursts out laughing herself. It reminds you how timeless these moments are, the everyday small rebellions of children, the thin smile of a parent too tired to really be angry. Scholars still argue whether laundry was considered purely domestic drudgery or if it carried symbolic significance tied to notions of purity and ritual cleansing. Looking at the joy flickering on these faces, it's hard not to think it was both. By now you've worked your way through half the pile you carried here. Each piece is heavy with water, a dead weight when you lift it, but strangely satisfying to squeeze and twist, watching streams drip back into the basin. Your forearms burn from the effort, and you mutter under your breath about how you'll never underestimate the glory of dryer sheets again. The guy across from you catches your eye, grins, and tosses a line in your direction. "Harder work, cleaner soul." Said jokingly, but the phrase sticks with you. There's a little superstition whispered about the Nile's cleansing properties. Some insist that clothes rinsed in its water gain protection against illness. Fringe as it sounds, the Nile was life itself, so attributing magical qualities wasn't too far a leap. And honestly, standing here knee-deep in suds with that shimmering current just a few feet away, you'd like to think there's at least a kernel of truth. Maybe your tunic won't only be cleaner but also luckier. Stranger things have been believed, like crocodile dung being used as a contraceptive. Yes, someone thought that was a good idea. A sudden gust scatters a few freshly rinsed linens that had been draped over the low wall. You scramble, catching one just before it plunges back into the dirty basin water. There's a brief round of applause from the nearby group, and you bow dramatically, milking the moment for humor. Your shoulders are sore, but laughter helps you forget it for a heartbeat. The rhythm resumes. Hands plunge, fabric slaps, water splashes. You get lost in it again. The work is monotonous, yes, but in that monotony lies a strange kind of peace. Each movement is predictable, each task repeatable, and while your body strains, your mind wanders into soft daydreams. Pyramids shimmering in the distance, priests chanting in temples, boats gliding smoothly on the Nile. Laundry, in its own way, connects you to the pulse of this civilization. An ordinary act that threads through the extraordinary. You pause for a moment, shaking out your arms. Looking down at the basin, you see the water now cloudy, tinged with brown from the countless rinses. Someone nearby mutters about fetching fresh water. And though it feels endless, you know you'll finish this pile eventually, just as those before you did for thousands of years. The thought is both exhausting and comforting. After all, when the linen is clean, folded, and drying in the sun, there will be a fleeting sense of victory. A small triumph carved into an otherwise ordinary day. And right now that's enough. The day finally draws to a close. The last rays of sunlight stretch across the Nile, turning the river into a mirror of molten gold. Laundry that was once heavy with river water is now light, fragrant, and neatly folded. Each piece, whether a grand pleated robe or a humble work tunic, is carefully gathered into reed baskets. You sit by the riverbank for a moment, letting your hands rest on the cool linen. Around you, the sounds of the village soften. Children called home by their mothers, goats settling into pens, fishermen pulling their nets for the night. The rhythm of life slows, and with it your breathing deepens. As night descends, the moon rises over the desert, casting a silver glow on the rippling water. You think of the great flood cycles of the Nile, how each inundation brings both challenge and renewal. With every rising of the river, new soil feeds the land, new flax can grow, and new linen can be woven. The cycle continues, steady and dependable, just like the timeless work of washing clothes by the river. The folded garments, now ready for use, hold within them the quiet story of the day. The gentle scrub of fabric against stone, the laughter of companions, the fragrance of oils, and the blessing of sun and wind. Tomorrow will come again with its own bundles of linen, its own tasks, its own rhythms. But for tonight the work is done. You take a deep breath of the cool night air, the scent of lotus drifting faintly on the breeze. The Nile whispers softly, a lullaby that has echoed for thousands of years. With each fold and each cycle of the river, life in ancient Egypt moves gently forward. Calm, steady, eternal. And so, under the moonlit sky, you allow yourself to rest. The day's tasks slip away, and in their place comes a deep stillness, like linen folded neatly into silence.